It was a slow Tuesday afternoon at Clara's kitchen, the kind of tucked-away roadside diner where time moved just a little slower, and the coffee was always hot. A comforting rhythm filled the place, a steady chorus of clinking cutlery, the gentle shuffle of booths sliding open and closed, and the low hum of conversations only half meant to be overheard. Outside, the early winter wind scratched lightly against the windows, but inside, the warmth of familiarity and the scent of maple syrup hung thick in the air. For 5 years, Madison Lane had worked here. She knew every regular by name and could recite their usual orders better than they could themselves. She didn't need to ask how Mr. Jenkins liked his pancakes, extra crisp edges, 3 syrups, none of that sugar-free nonsense. She already knew. She wasn't just another waitress in a retro red apron. Madison was a fixture, a confidant, a keeper of stories, the kind of person who, even in silence, made people feel like they belonged. But lately, her world outside the diner had been unraveling. Her mother's health had taken a turn, and with it came mounting medical bills that never seemed to stop multiplying. Her younger brother, Eli, was in his senior year and desperately trying to apply to colleges with scholarships as his only option. Madison picked up extra shifts, worked doubles, and skipped breaks. But the numbers still didn't add up, and her own dreams of going back to school felt further away with each sunrise. Still, every day, she showed up. Smiling, working, serving. As she often told herself quietly while fixing her name tag in the mirror each morning, kindness doesn't cost a thing, but it might just buy someone hope. That Tuesday, just as she was refilling the sugar dispensers at the counter, the door creaked open with the familiar jingle of the brass bell. A man walked in. He looked like he hadn't had a warm place to be in weeks. His coat was frayed, his shoulders hunched against the cold, and his shoes had long since given up pretending to keep his feet dry. He shuffled to a stool at the end of the counter, head bowed as though trying to disappear into the laminated menu. Madison approached him with that soft, practiced kindness of someone who understood more than she let on. "Coffee?" she asked, her tone light but warm, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. The man nodded, but hesitated. His fingers fumbled awkwardly with a tattered wallet, producing a small collection of nickels and dimes. It wasn't enough, not even close. From across the diner, the manager, Gerald Vaughn, leaned against the server's station, arms crossed and jaw tight. He'd noticed the man the moment he walked in and already didn't like the look of him. "If he can't pay, he can't stay," Gerald grumbled under his breath, not even bothering to lower his voice. Madison paused, then looked down at the coins on the counter. Without a word, she poured a fresh cup of coffee, placed it gently in front of the man, and whispered, "It's on me." The man blinked, taken aback. His fingers trembled slightly as he wrapped them around the mug like it was the first warmth he'd felt in days. "Thank you," he murmured, voice hoarse but sincere. Gerald saw everything, and he did not approve. When the man stood a few minutes later, offering one last quiet thank you before stepping back out into the chill, Gerald stormed over, his footsteps loud against the tile. "You can't just give away food like that," he barked, loud enough to turn every head in the diner. "That's stealing from the restaurant." Madison didn't flinch. She set the coffee pot down, turned to face him squarely. "It was just a cup of coffee," she said calmly. "He needed it." "That's not your decision," Gerald snapped. "You're not paid to make charity calls. You're paid to follow rules. You're fired." A hush fell over the diner. Cooks peeked out from the kitchen pass-through window. Regulars sat frozen, forks midair. A toddler stopped babbling and stared. Madison's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. She pulled off her apron, folded it neatly, and laid it on the counter. "I hope one day you understand," she said softly. "Kindness is worth more than a few extra dollars." And with that, she walked out, head held high. She didn't cry in the parking lot, though her hands trembled as she unlocked her aging sedan. She didn't cry when she told her mom later that night, brushing it off with, "We'll figure something out." But she did cry, alone, in the dark of her room, not from regret, but from exhaustion. She wasn't prepared for what came next. The following morning, Clara's kitchen was as busy as any midweek breakfast rush. Gerald was barking orders, trying to ignore the empty space behind the counter where Madison usually stood. Then, just as he was reaching for his clipboard, a sleek black car rolled to a stop in front of the diner. The driver's door opened, and out stepped the man from yesterday. But he didn't look the same. Gone were the tattered clothes. In their place was a sharp navy suit, polished shoes, and a purposeful stride. His salt and pepper hair was neatly styled, and his presence turned every head in the diner. Gerald squinted, confused, unsure whether to approach or hide. The man stepped through the door and smiled politely at a few stunned customers. Then he walked straight up to Gerald. "Good morning," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "James Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings." Gerald's eyes widened. He knew that name. Everyone in the food industry did. Whitmore Holdings owned nearly 30 major restaurant brands across the country, including Clara's Kitchen. "I'm here," James continued, "because I wanted to see how things were running. Undercover, you could say. It's something I do from time to time. Helps me understand how the soul of a business is being treated." Gerald swallowed. "I didn't know you were coming." "You weren't supposed to," James replied coolly. He took a breath and let the pause hang. Then he asked the question that made Gerald sweat. "Where is Madison Lane?" Gerald shifted nervously. "She no longer works here." "I see," James said, jaw tightening. "And why is that?" Gerald mumbled. "She gave away coffee to someone who couldn't pay. That's against policy." "Your policy," James said, evenly. "Not mine." Then he turned toward the stunned customers and said aloud, "You all deserve to know that yesterday, this young woman you fired showed more heart than most people ever do. She didn't know who I was. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because it was right." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. By that afternoon, they found Madison at home, still in her pajamas, debating whether to start looking for another job or just crawl back into bed. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Lane," the voice on the line said. "This is James Whitmore. I believe we met yesterday." He told her everything. That he wasn't just a down-and-out stranger. That he was testing how the staff at Clara's treated not just customers, but people. And Madison? She'd passed with flying colors. "I'd like to offer you your job back," he said. "With a promotion. And a personal commitment. I'll cover your mother's medical bills. And your brother's tuition." She sat in stunned silence. "You didn't just serve coffee," James told her. "You served humanity. You reminded me what real service means." The story exploded across town. Local news picked it up. Then regional. By week's end, national headlines read, "Waitress fired for kindness gets life-changing surprise." Strangers sent letters, donations, scholarships, job offers. But Madison didn't chase fame. She returned to Clara's, now under new management, as the diner's official community outreach director, a title James created just for her. She trained staff across the country in empathy, service, and integrity. But more than that, she became a symbol, not of charity, but of grace. That cup of coffee had cost her a job, but it gave her a calling. And long after the headlines faded, the story lived on. Clara's Kitchen became known not just for pancakes and coffee, but for being a place where kindness mattered more than money. And Madison? Every day, she showed up, still smiling, still serving proof that sometimes the smallest gestures ripple into the biggest changes. Because real humanity, real service, real goodness, it never goes unnoticed. And it always finds its way back.